Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about Crown and Skull and what is different in Crown and Skull than Dungeons & Dragons. And frankly, this is a major new improvement on Dungeons & Dragons from Crown and Skull. And I want to talk about Crown and Skull rules from the perspective of Dungeons & Dragons and how they're different. So Crown and Skull has no to hit roll. This is astonishing. All right, so when you take a longsword and you run up to your enemy and you use your player character to run up to your enemy and you strike a guy human fighter, goblin. Okay, human fighter has a longsword. He runs up to the goblin in Crown and Skull. In D&D you would roll a D20 and then you would add your proficiency bonus, because you're a fighter, right? And you would add your strength bonus, right? And so let's say you get a +2 from strength and your proficiency bonus is a 3, you get a +5, and you need an 18, and actually on a goblin, you need a 12 to hit, right? So you only need to roll a 7 on the D20, right? What happens in Crown and Skull? You skip the to hit roll altogether, you automatically hit, okay? Then a goblin is going to have a defense of 1, okay? So basically, you are going to roll your... so actually, in Crown and Skull, you say, my human fighter runs up to the goblin and strikes him with the... and strikes this goblin with the longsword, okay? It's it. It hits, right? So you roll your damage. Longsword damage is the same in Crown and Skull and in D&D. It's going to be a D8. Okay, so you roll a D8 and you get a 3. The defense reduces that by 1, so you do 2 points of damage to the goblin. And a goblin in Crown and Skull is going to have 1 hit point, which means it would probably be killed because you did 2 hit points, right? And so that's it. There's no to hit roll in Crown and Skull, which is astonishing. So let's talk about the no to hit roll. Okay, so first of all, this is the new shiznizzle, right? This is in every hot new game that's trying to take down Dungeons and Dragons. First of all, it was in Daggerheart. I think they took it out, right? Because it freaks people out. They're so used to rolling to hit from D20 from Dungeons and Dragons current edition, right? From Dungeons and Dragons now, okay? They're so used to it that it freaks a lot of players out. They don't even know what to do, right? And let's talk about this in depth. So one of the things, what does this do? First of all, you do have to make multiple rolls to cast magic in Crown and Skull. So right out of the gate, it massively makes martial characters way more powerful in Crown and Skull than they are in Dungeons & Dragons. Is this a good thing? Heck to the yes, right? This is why Dungeons & Dragons is adding spellcasting to every single class, right? Because spellcasters in D&D are so ridiculously powerful, right? That without magic, fighters look schlubby, right? They really do, right? So that's something that's really good. Is this really helps all martial classes, right? So that's a big deal. Okay. The other thing is, I cannot tell you how fast this runs. And just to be clear, if I had rolled a 1 on the damage from the D8, it would have been a miss. So you can technically get a miss in Crown and Skull if the number rolled on your damage is lower than the defense, is equal to or lower than the defense. That's considered a miss, right? So you do get misses, but there's no to hit roll, which is astonishing. It is absolutely astonishing, right? And I cannot tell you how fast this is. It cuts combats by minimum a third, minimum, right? And it's really something. Now, does this work for non-player characters? Do they just hit the player characters? Absolutely not. the player character gets to make their defense roll. All of the player characters start with a defense of 6, and then you add to that with your armor. So like if you're wearing leather armor, that's a +7. You have to roll a 7 or below to not get struck by a goblin trying to hit you with a rusty dagger, right? So that's how that works. This is so fast, right? It just super speeds up combat. And it strips away a whole bunch of nonsense that's in Dungeons & Dragons with, oh, I'm going to need this +5. Oh, like, and the entire roll just disappears, right? And they're like, you're going into combat. You know what you're doing. They know what they're doing. People, there's going to be some blood on the ground right now, right? Like, not whiff, right? And it is really good. Much better than Dungeons & Dragons. So I cannot recognize, the rule is better than Dungeons & Dragons. Make no mistake, playing Dungeons & Dragons is still better than playing Crown and Skull. Only because, one, you know, when you bring people to Dungeons & Dragons, you're not going to have to explain to them 10 times what Crown and Skull is and who that Hector Farinale is. And that's not a real name. It's a joke about drinking. And that comes back from Drinking's a Dragon. Like, and suddenly you're talking about beer and wine, and you're like, oh my gosh, I miss Dungeons & Dragons, right? So really, Crown and Skull's rules are phenomenally better than Dungeons & Dragons. And honestly, by every measure, Crown and Skull should be a Dungeons & Dragons killer, but it's not. In fact, the vast majority of people don't even know exists. But I'm telling you, this thing is a banger, and you should be running it. It is phenomenally good, and no 2-hit rolls are the shizzy whizzle, right? It is very cool. I'm running this thing. It is amazing. I'm incredibly blessed to have the Gold Dragon Master who's running Crown Skull with me. It is fantastic. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.